You're listening to Three Things to Know with Stephanie Haney, with experts and insiders on what you need to know in Northeast Ohio.
Hi there, everybody. Welcome back to the Three Things to Know podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Haney, and I'm so happy to have you here with me today, hanging out, because we are talking about the great American pastime. We are talking about the return of baseball. We are in baseball season. A lot of people very excited about that. Can we talk about the fact that the home opener at Progressive Field is on Monday, April 5th against the Kansas City Royals, and you can watch it on Channel 3. We will have special coverage happening all afternoon starting at 2 p.m. leading right up to the game against Kansas City. I promise you, a good time will be had by all. Now, many of you might be thinking it would be great if we knew what our team was going to be named in the coming seasons and actually when that name change was going to happen. We do know that a name change is planned. It's in the future. We don't necessarily know when. That's something we're going to be talking about today. That's the topic of conversation, the name of our Cleveland baseball team. And to talk about this, my guest today is our investigative reporter, Mark Naymik. He's been on the podcast a couple times. He's shared what you need to know in NEO. He also was a part of the Year in Review with Romney Smith and Russ Mitchell. That was a great episode. If you didn't catch that, go back and listen to it. It's a two-parter. Lots of interesting stuff there. But Mark has been covering the Tribe and the city of Cleveland in general for quite some time now, so he's the perfect person to talk about this. He knows the ins and outs, the history, how we got where we are today, all of that good stuff, and maybe has a little bit of insight into potentially where we're going just based on some of the things that we've seen in the past. So let's bring him in right now. Mark, thank you so much for joining us again on the Three Things to Know podcast.
Hey, I'm glad to be here. I want to be really clear, though. No one will ever accuse me of covering what happens inside the lines. Okay, I'm always outside the lines when it comes to covering baseball and sports franchises, and I leave the other stuff to the real pros.
Hey, that's where we want you, and that's where we need you, and that is why you are here today, because there's really a lot of history to this, you know. So can you kind of just walk us through, how do we get to this point where we're even talking about the name of our baseball team and just the history of the Tribe being here?
Yeah, this is not a new debate or a new issue. The Indians were founded around 1887. So just wrap your mind around that for a moment. And originally, like everything else in Cleveland, they were called the Four Cities as a team. And then it kind of changed a few years after that to a very popular name right now, the Spiders. And it's sketchy as to why they were the Spiders, but that seemed to be popular for a short time. And then they changed to the Naps, which is kind of an odd name, but it was Napoleon LaJoie was a star player at the time, and that they named it after him. But guess what? Everybody gets traded in baseball. And when he left,
Especially
like,
around here.
yeah, when he left, they're like, well, we can't call it the Naps. He's not here. And that's when they became the Indians in 1915. And I know we've talked before, and there's been a lot written and said about the origins of the Indians name and whether or not it was truly meant to honor a Native American ball player, Louis Sockalexis. Most historians and reporters that have dug deep into it, you know, will fall on the side that it really wasn't honoring that ball player as much as it was really a popular marketing gimmick at the time to be called the Indians or the Tribe, or to go out and scalp somebody. And since he had played for the Indians, they thought, well, close enough. And the people who picked the name were a group of sports writers. I can't confirm or deny whether they were, 6 drinks into the wind when they chose it, but the sports writers back in the day were hard workers and hard partiers. So I'm not sure. But the idea, the legend that this was always meant to honor the Indians, I think the ball club itself and many sports writers have come to terms with that not being accurate. It's part of the myth and the mythology. There's roots there, but it was not really some big honor for a ball player. That if you look up, and reporters have done this, when you pull the old stories, sports writers were brutal. They made fun of him as a drunk. They, when he didn't play well, he was, really, they used a lot of no different nicknames for him that weren't very flattering. So it's hard to say it was an honor. But anyway, we've now come, from that over 100 years with that name, and we're ready to change the name again. As you know, last December, the Cleveland Indians made that decision or announcement that they're going to change the name. Exactly when, we know is kind of a moving target. The goal was at the end of next year, but that could get pushed back beyond that. So
Mm-hmm.
that is where we are today. And of course, we can talk a bit about at some point, why are we changing? A lot has happened in the last year. I mean, obviously the social unrest from last summer had a lot of teams, institutions, governments rethinking names and the histories. But more importantly, those advertisers were pressuring folks to do it. We saw that really happen with the Redskins NFL team. They had big sponsors really push that. I don't think there's a more offensive name in sports than the Redskins. They're gone, and I think the Indians, made the decision to let's just break from any appropriation to Native Americans and be done with it. And I've covered a lot of the issue of Native Americans and activists pushing for that change, and it's been really a long history of people trying to get the attention. And I don't think without last summer we'd probably be at this point.
Sure, and I personally am just always of the mindset, and I think this is maybe a good perspective to share. We don't really necessarily get to decide what's offensive to someone else. It's kind of like I take the approach of if you are doing something that's offensive to someone else, maybe we just err on the side of not doing the offensive thing. That seems like a pretty safe approach. I don't know why we need to sort of plant a flag and say this has meaning to us when it doesn't necessarily have any tie to us as a people other than a tradition. And this is not the first time we've been talking about changing the name, right? This happened in the late 80s, early 90s too.
Yeah, there has been a push. So Native Americans and other activists have been calling for a name change for 30 plus years. And activists and others pushed at the time that each time the Indians was sold to a new owner, they thought that made sense. So if you go back to maybe two owners ago, Richard Jacobs, Dick Jacobs, as he was known, was a big developer, built a lot of the buildings downtown, bought the team. They thought, well, why doesn't he change it then? In late 80s, new name, new fresh. He wasn't. He was more of a traditionalist. He didn't want to hear it. A couple of years later, when we were building what is now Progressive Field, which opened in 1994, always easy to remember because there were big signs all over downtown painted on, the construction boards that said, "Hear the roar" in 94. So people were really
Mm.
pumped up. And they thought, well, look, new stadium, kind of new branding, let's change it. And didn't want to do it. And then there was a push again when the Dolans bought the team, Larry Dolan and the family in 2000, that maybe let's do it again. And even the owner of the team at the time, the father, the patriarch, though the kids have now run it, he was on the board of trustees at Oberlin College, definitely a bastion of liberal thought. Um, but he met with some Native Americans, students and professors there, and they pushed him on changing the name. And he was really adamant about it. He didn't see what the problem was with the name, and in particular, he stood and wouldn't even uh, hear of getting rid of Chief Wahoo. So, those are three different cases where people push for this name change earlier. Now, as you know, Stephanie, the Indians decided at the end of the 2018 season to banish Chief Wahoo, at least from the patch on the uniform. Of course, he'll still be there for merchandising. The Indians argued, by the way, that they needed to protect that so others wouldn't do it and that they could sell it. They could control the market on Chief Wahoo, but you did see signage and uniforms all switched to the Block C. And, that was a big sign. Now, I grew up an Indians fan. I used to go to Municipal Stadium, never gave it much thought. I had a poster of Charlie Spikes above my bed. I loved Buddy Bell, I think probably back then because I liked the name. Um, But so I was there. I understood Chief Wahoo as I got older, that the caricature um, certainly played on the stereotypes of red-faced, hook nose, buck teeth. Um, it took me longer to understand why is the name Indian offensive. But as I spent time annually, as I did for many years, marching and walking to cover those protests that were on opening day, sometimes a handful of people, sometimes more, I did see their argument. Native Americans and indigenous people said, how do we get seen for who we are as a modern people if we're constantly used as mascots and names, and that is what keeps us in a box? Sure, it doesn't offend all Native Americans, but the argument was, and I started to understand and really see it, is let's not use appropriation of this name for anything other than Native Americans and the history that it represents, which is a brutal history here and shouldn't be part of sports marketing. And that's the evolution of my own thinking. And I think we've seen team owners and the public moving there. There are some who are never going to give it up, Stephanie. I've filmed some of the reaction from Cleveland Indians baseball fans walking by demonstrators, and the foul language, the abuse, the stereotypes that they hurl at people calling for a name change. It it's sad. At
Mm-hmm.
times, it's the lowest common denominator, but it is part of the story. So we've seen the change, and now we're here. The Indians are moving forward with it.
And, to speak to that change too, you talk about how Larry Dolan said he didn't see any problem. Well, Paul Dolan recently said that Paul Dolan at least saw a problem with Chief Wahoo when the team was purchased in 2000 and knew that it was problematic then. So that's an evolution within a family there that we see. And as you said, we've come to a place now where, at least ostensibly, we're going to get to that in a minute, but they're supposed to be changing the name. It could happen in the 2022 season. It might take a little longer. We'll see about that. But let's talk about some of the front runners. First of all, one front runner that I have seen probably the most organized support behind is the name the Municipals. And the people who want this name, they are on it, man. They have pitched stories to us. They are going out. They are getting partnerships. Seems like there's at least, I don't know number-wise, but a very dedicated movement behind the name the Municipals.
Yeah, I'm never buying a team hat that says Municipals. That just sounds too much like City Hall, and the guys out there working hard every day to collect your garbage and keep the water and utilities on. So I would pass personally. I get it. We know the Municipals comes from the Municipal Stadium, which was, we all, right. Our memories fade that we only have wonderful things to say about that stadium, unless you were sitting behind one of the beams, the many beams that were blocking the view of entire sections because of that stadium. But we love nostalgia, and clearly that is probably why that has some legs, so to speak, as people loved Muni Stadium, because it represented some strong days for both the Browns and although I don't know that the Indians had too many great seasons at Muni Stadium, as most fans could tell you, but I can see that. But that stadium, I don't know how many people remember, but that stadium is sitting just about 500 feet its off of the current site of the Brown Stadium under the lake. They dumped it in the lake to create a natural reef.
Oh.
And that's where it sits. So maybe we could call ourselves the Reefers.
Interesting. Hey, there might be a case for that here, in the near future, maybe, if we can get that legalization of all recreational marijuana here in Ohio. You never know. Could make a lot of sense then. But I will say this. Northeast Ohioans, they do love their sports. They also love their beer. And the Municipals, the people behind this name, even got the Saucy Brewworks Brewery to name a beer the Municipals. So there's at least a certain level of community support for it. But I'm for you. I think that's a big leap to ask people to make if they see Municipals on a jersey, to sort of remember all of that. Big leap
And there's
there.
generations of people. I'm old enough to have been there, but most most haven't. They don't have a connection to that stadium. But hey, we'll keep it in the mix. I think it's, if there is no trademark and already on that, that could be what we're stuck with.
Yeah, I have a feeling the trademark's available on that one. Another one that's been pretty popular historically, you mentioned this, the spiders.
Yeah, I think people like it because spiders are cool in some way, and you could probably do a lot with, you
Opinions
know,
differ on the coolness of spiders, but go on.
yeah, but that you can see some kind of logo or merchandising. Think about, the announcers could have so much fun with, like, caught in the Indian's web. I mean, you can just see where we're headed on that one. I'm willing to bet someone has already probably captured the spider's name. Some cyber squatter out there is sitting on that trademark. But that one, because of the legacy to the early, 1900s, that name was part of the team's, legacy. So I can see why that one has done well.
Yeah, kind of like you're never going to buy a hat with municipals on it. I'm never going to buy a jersey with a big old spider on it. Uh, I will tell you, I call it spider season. There is a period of time where I will get like quarter sized spiders in my downtown Cleveland apartment. And it's just not something I want to think about when I'm enjoying a baseball game. It's just not. But again, speaking to the community support, CLE Clothing Company, they've got a place right downtown. They have some of those vintage Spiders t-shirts. So, I mean, a little bit easier, I guess, to come up with that because we did have a Spiders team. They've got that vintage style to pull from. But they do also have one featuring Municipal Stadium, too. So they're kind of hedging their bets at the CLE Clothing Company, I think.
Yeah, for sure. So I can see spiders kind of keeping the top of the list. So I'll let you continue with those other ones that are out there.
All right, Cleveland Guardians. Now, this is one that just seems to be floating a lot around social media. I don't really know that's being talked about anywhere else, but seeing a lot of it online.
Yeah, the Guardians, it's been used in a lot of imagery for the city's marketing because of the Hope Memorial Bridge, or Carnegie Avenue Bridge, whatever you want to call it, that leads from Ohio City, really at West Side Market, up and over to Progressive Field. Um, there are transportation guardians. The stone that's cut in those bridge show guardians. They're used in tons of marketing. If you go to Destination Cleveland, which is our tourism bureau, you'll see images. Virtually everyone uses it. They're dramatic photos in the right light. People post it on Instagram. So I clearly, the guardians of traffic, the protectors of transportation. It's a bit of a stretch for me, but I get it. And Guardians isn't a bad thing. You kind of think superhero maybe. So I can see why that has and I don't know. I'm willing to bet that one's also taken already, but trademark protection. So yeah, that one is popular. That one hit early when the name was announced, the name change, that people were like, "Ooh, Guardians, Guardians." So, but really, there's, I don't know, like 6 or 8 Guardians on that bridge, but most people don't even know where it comes from or would have any connection unless you've been sort of a downtown dweller, where you've seen it and noticed it.
Right. It seems a little obscure and a little. It's. I'm a nerd. I am. It's just a little too nerdy for me. The Guardians, just not into that one for me. So we'll move
Send
along.
your pictures of Guardians to Stephanie Haney at WKYC, please.
Yeah, go ahead and send them to me. Educate me. Maybe I'll nerd out on it. Maybe I'll be into it after that. Who knows? But the historical ones have been very popular. There's another historical one that would sort of be paying homage to a underrepresented group, a group that's definitely, a lot of people would argue, been wronged by Major League Baseball, the Cleveland Buckeyes.
Yeah, the Buckeyes, well, I think it's a bit of an olive branch, of course, to the Ohio State, but I just think because it's so entrenched with Buckeye football, I can't see it working here. But the Cleveland Buckeyes do have history with the Negro American League, and so there could be some real connection there that people can make the case for. But I just think Buckeyes is too Columbus centric in Ohio State for it to fly anymore here.
I would agree. I think it's too entrenched with that. People just it's just not gonna ring the same way on the baseball
Yeah, I
field.
mean, I just think of Buckeyes on the helmets of Ohio State football players for, each big tackle they get and all of that.
Yeah, they can put them on the bat. Put a Buckeye on the
Yeah.
bat for every home run. Who knows? All right, here's another one that we've been seeing: the Cleveland Rockers, which is a reference to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, also a historical tie here with the Cleveland WNBA.
Yeah, I don't see it and personally don't like it. I think we have finally, as a as a city, matured and don't feel that we have to keep claiming that we're the city of rock and roll. As you know, we made a big stink about finally not having a guitar featured in one of our All-Star Game logos.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've used it about 6 or 7 times for different events, from the RNC to All-Star games, both basketball and baseball, and conventions use it. And I think it doesn't reflect the grit of the city that we represent. I love the Rock Hall, and I poked and made fun of it at times for representing mom rock, but I know it's much more alternative and current and contemporary. But I think the Rockers feels dated, and even here's some evidence to that. Stephanie, a couple years ago, Destination Cleveland, Dave Gilbert's group, they really look hard at marketing. This is all pre-pandemic. They did surveys, and the connection to rock and roll was really way down. They started de-emphasizing it in some of the branding and getting away from that because it's a generational thing that's not connecting. And I would think the Rockers are also already captured by some cyber squatters, but I hope we move past the Rockers. I think that's too narrow and doesn't represent the grit and history of this city.
I was wondering what the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame felt about it, and I don't know if they've made a statement. If they have made a statement, I haven't seen it. So I did email them this morning, and I just asked them, what do you feel about this? How do you think? I'm just going to check my email and see if they got back to me.
Well,
I
I know
doubt
Greg
that they
Harris is
did.
an Indians fan. I've seen him go to the stadium on opening day. He's walked right by me, so at least he's interested in loves baseball, as we know, because his history is coming from, I believe, the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Well, no response yet from them. I did send the email very late today, so that's totally my fault. But I was just curious because we've seen that other, we've got the beer for the Municipals, we've got the T-shirts for the Spiders. How does the Rock Hall feel about the name that's closely tied to them? Those are the main ones that I've seen. Any other front runners stick out to you, Mark?
Well, the Naps have reemerged because of that history, and here's one again. I'm not probably a huge fan of, but the Cleveland Great Lakes, or the Lakers. Now, obviously, you have that strong identification to the basketball Lakers, but if we could come up with something related to the lake, right? Our greatest asset. We're sitting on, uh, you know, uh, connected to the largest body of fresh water in the world through the Great Lakes, and so much gets ignored. But I don't know that people go with it. So that is one suggestion that's been out there: the Great Lakes or the Lakers. Of course, I think of beer again because of great job that Great Lakes has done over the years as a brewery. But
Mm-hmm.
that would be the other one that's out there. I think we've hit them, right? Spiders, Guardians, Buckeyes, Rockers, Naps, and the Municipals. So,
Yep.
but here's the funny thing about all the discussion, and the Cleveland Indians baseball team is, really does want input from fans. But I think if you read between the lines, they've constantly been acknowledging that, like, in the end, we're only going to be able to get what's available, and what's going to work for both marketing and a way to make something new, and it limits them. I think they've acknowledged that, and then you're never going to appease all the fans. They're all going to want something different. So I think in Paul Dolan's latest statements about the name change, that is one reason this might take longer than he thought. They've got to figure out a good name that's acceptable, that's going to work for the team, for the public, and that is available, that isn't already part of some other branding. So I think that's going to slow it down a bit.
Yeah, that argument about what's available, you can buy
You can
anything.
buy it, sure, but do they want to, and will they, and what does it mean? No,
That's
absolutely.
the question. Do they want to and will they? They're the fourth wealthiest Major League Baseball team owners, by the way, and we do have the lowest payroll in
Well,
baseball right now.
that might answer your question if they're not, they're not willing to spend to get it. But it really is what's out there. What are they going to use? I mean, it can't. I'm sure they're going to go through some. There are discussions behind the scenes that are probably they're throwing out names that we've never thought of or that might seem crazy. But um, does it have to have a Cleveland connection? Do you just go out and call them the Cleveland Ballers? I mean, I don't. You don't know. They
Right.
might go a totally different direction. I'm not in love with like the Washington Nationals baseball team. I mean, Nationals, I get the connection, but it just doesn't do it for me. I hope we'll come up with something like, we're not going to call ourselves the Clevelanders.
Ugh. Yeah, no. That the Washington Nationals to me does feel on par with the Cleveland Municipals. I'm just like, can we
Yeah.
just keep the city government and the government out of the baseball park, please?
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, I digress. So, okay, so talking about the timing of this, right? So, Paul Dolan, he said in December, the name is no longer acceptable. He says it's a multi stage process. He says the name will stay through the 2021 season. We all knew that. He says hopefully by 2022. Well, then he says it could be longer. And for some of those points that you mentioned, it's a multi stage process, yada yada. We're going to work hard to get it done. But let's talk about the elephant in the room here. The lease is up at Progressive Field in 2023. And now we've got Paul Dolan setting a stage where the name change might not happen until 2023. I don't know, Mark, is that too cute? What do you think? What does that mean? Does it mean
Well,
anything?
I'm gonna use Paul's words, and I don't want to sound like a representative of the team, but he has a very deliberate statement out there when all of this has been asked recently, and he says the most important part of the name is Cleveland. And that to me suggests you don't set your sights on it. They are extraordinarily wealthy, so maybe they're not going to be enticed by selling the team out. I mean, just give you an example of how baseball. I don't have in real dollars, but Dick Jape, Dick Jacobs bought it for, I don't know, 33 million, sold it for 365 million to the Dolans. Now it's worth over $1 billion. Um, I don't, if they want to cash in, great. But usually, wealthy owners, it's about owning and having a team and being part of that that keeps them interested. Cleveland's got a great legacy. But the lease being up is literally it's up tomorrow in stadium and government time. There are clearly going to be discussions that, well, they have been going on. Just people aren't talking about them publicly about what to do. As I've reported before, this stadium needs a lot of upgrades. The non-sexy stuff, the infrastructure, the electrical systems and roofs and different things. We see it and it looks great and it is well maintained, but they need and want upgrades. We're no longer pushing for bigger stadiums and more seating because we know the whole dynamic of baseball. We're actually taking seats out during the last upgrades. They've removed sections and, as you know, have added more, bar field, open field. You've seen it happen at the arena as well. The idea is, of course, is to get people in and make it more of a lifestyle park. So we're not going to see a push for a bigger stadium. That's not going to drive it. It's going to be how much is the public willing to take on to support a major renovation. That's what the Indians are going to push for. Obviously a big part of that, and we'll have to have a podcast on how we're going to pay for it. Do we
Hmm.
try to increase the sin tax on alcohol and tobacco that currently pays for all of our stadiums? We know those numbers continue to decline, and you divide it three ways, there's not much left. So that's the big part of the discussion going on with the lease. Really, is what's the future of the quality of the stadium. Everybody wants the newest and the best. The lease with the Cleveland Browns is really fascinating because in those leases, it literally says the public and the owners, in this case is the city of Cleveland and the Browns Stadium, has to guarantee that their stadium will always be in the top, third of stadiums in terms of quality, renovation, technology. And those things get written in, and that's a big burden on the public. Now with the Browns, we've seen the Haslams, invest quite a bit of their own money, just as we've seen that happen with Dan Gilbert and the arena. And there's plenty of debate on whether they should pay for it all, given their wealth. Why should we? But that's, again, a different argument. So I think in 2023, the Indians will be here, but there could be all kinds of things that go on. Do they extend the lease short term? Do they have to, because they're not going to build or renovate a new stadium in the next year and a half. They just need a commitment that something will happen. And I hope to, start seeing that. It is run by a public board called the Gateway Corporation. As you know, Gateway Plaza, that's, they're the entity that helps maintain both the arena and Jacobs Field. Listen to me, I'm in old days. Progressive.
We're really getting historical here now. The Jake, I remember going there back in the day.
Yes.
All right, well, here's the question that I have to ask. And please, everyone in Cleveland who's listening to this, don't flood my DMs and tell me I'm a terrible person. But somebody needs to ask this question. Does anybody really care? Is Cleveland really a baseball town when we look at the stadium attendance, the arena attendance, right? It's not been great.
Yeah, well, Stephanie, we know you're a big Browns fan, so
Yes.
we know where your loyalties are, and you wouldn't tolerate someone saying that about the Browns, would
I
you?
sure would not. Nope, that's true.
Yeah, I think the numbers would reflect that we're not, but the economics of baseball is different. They can make money without filling the stadium. Just because they can fill it, does that mean you should move? And does that bring you far more revenue? Some, sure, but there's a different equation. The leaders of the city, and I mean civic, elected officials, they're going to argue it's invaluable. And this is the argument that's been going on forever. We invest public dollars in it because the idea of a stadium not only drives some economic development in the downtown, but the argument is always, in order to attract young professionals. Think about it. How hard would it be for Jones Day, a top law firm in the world based here in Cleveland, to attract young lawyers to this city if there's no Browns, no Indians, a lack of infrastructure and arts and community, because they feel that's what brings people here. The talent pool is drawn by the sense that a city has this, cosmopolitan, no matter how big or small it is. And having a baseball team in the downtown would also, would be huge for the city. And if they didn't have it, and then there are plenty of folks who would just say, hey, if the Indians just win more, we'll fill the stadium, and we've seen that in some other time. So that is an oversimplified argument, but the value of it is beyond just who sits in the seats. It is what it means for the city, the ability to attract people, to market itself. And I do think a winning team builds generational support over time. So
All right, well,
you can flood her DMs if you don't like that response, please.
Flood my DMs, and also I'll just say, Dolans, if you're listening, let's get some players and let's keep them around for a little while.
Yeah, it's a little depressing to be pumped up for opening day when we kind of come in going, well, we're going to field the best team we can, and there's going to be some players, but we might be in a rebuilding phase, and that's where the loss of fans are right now.
Those rebuilding phases, we know them well. But hey, look at where we're at with the Browns. So
yeah, that was a painful 22 years to get there. Plus,
it was most of my adult life, but we're in the good part now. So maybe that's on the horizon for whatever our baseball team will be. Okay, Mark, before I let you go here, I have to ask. We've talked about some other front runners. Do you have a favorite? Is there one that you would vote for today?
If it's from the list that we talked about, it would be the Spiders, for no other reason than, again, I'm looking forward to all the puns that we could do with it, and the merchandising would be kind of cool. And there aren't a spider out there. There is not, in other sports teams, this could be unique. Personally, I wish I had the lightning bolt hit me, that I could think of something that would represent Cleveland's, a little bit more of its grit and industrial past. That would be kind of cool. I know, you know, if it's out there, I guess I can't see it. The Steamers, the Shippers, we can't be the Steelers, right? It's already been done. Is there something we're all missing? That would be great for those listening to kind of think outside the box, break from any tradition with the Indians, and just come up totally fresh, and let's go with a new name that represents something with the city. Please, not the Cleveland Sunsets or anything like that.
No.
I can see someone sending that in. But so right now, with the list in front of us, the Spiders, I think the Spiders did pretty well in some of the early polls, where people were voting on them. I think Guardians was up there. That's where I am. Spiders, unless we come up with something better. And what
Yeah.
about you, Stephanie? Where do you fall? I know it's
You
not
know
the
what?
Spiders.
I do anything but the Spiders, truly. Anything but the Spiders. I'm totally not a fan of the Buckeyes. I would like a little chaos, honestly. I don't love any of those names. I want something totally just wild and different. I want them to come out and say, here's the name, here's the design, and something you've never thought of, and I kind of want my mind to be blown. I know that's asking for a lot, but this is my fantasy world where I get to ask for a lot, and that's what I want, is a totally wild name that's complete chaos.
And I think you're right. I think the Dolans in the end are going to totally surprise us, and they're going to come up with a name that might take a little bit of selling that some are going to love, but it's going to be different. I think that is a unique opportunity to break, from the past. And I think with Dolan's comment that Cleveland is what matters in this name. Let's see what they can come up with. But I don't think it should take a couple of years to do.
No,
you,
come
you
on.
can you can do it. You can get the stuff going, and over time change so the signage and merchandising. This isn't that complicated.
No, I'm not buying that at all. Exactly. Thank you for saying that. I'm totally with you on that. All right. Well, it is almost opening day. We are very excited about that. People can watch that here on Channel 3. So make sure you catch that. Mark, thank you for having this conversation with us. I guess we'll see what happens. Appreciate
Hey,
you
thank
being
you
here.
for having me, and I'm always happy to talk about Cleveland. That's my jam. So
It
thank you.
definitely is. Thank you so much, Mark. All right, I know some of you are not going to be happy with me for asking if Cleveland is a baseball town, but I do think it's a fair question if the seats are not getting filled up at Progressive Field. I'll just say that. But I'll also say I really like going to a baseball game. And for the record, I have been supporting the Tribe from afar. The last 2 baseball games that I've been to were to see the Tribe play the Yankees at Yankee Stadium in 2016 and then 2019 right before I moved back here. So I am a supporter, so nobody get that twisted, okay? And that does bring me to what you need to know in NEO this week. I'm talking about the district ticket at Progressive Field. If you want to go to the game and you want to save some money and you want to just hang around and have a good time and not be, stuck in your seats, you can buy a district ticket for $15 and it includes your first drink. So if you get a 12-ounce beer, that's what you get. You get your admissions plus the 12-ounce beer. But if you don't want a 12-ounce beer, it can be preloaded with money to put towards whatever else it is that you want. So if you want a non-alcoholic beverage, sure. If you want a cocktail, sure, that'll probably be a little bit more. But $15 gets you in, standing room, and you can watch the game if you want to from the corner bar in the right field district, or you can go to the drink rails in left field or right field. This is a great option if you're going to a game at the last minute. I found out about this because my very good friend Nicole and her husband Scott are big Tribe fans. They go to a lot of games, and they told me this is the way to go. Super easy, super cheap, have a good time. It's casual, it's relaxed. I mean, I don't really see a downside. So if you want to check it out, it's at indians.com/district ticket. And if you don't follow the Indians on Twitter, I am here to tell you right now that account is a good follow. They do the funniest stuff. Let me just give you a prime example. In last season, they let people know in May, when people very much needed something to entertain themselves, that they had hidden pictures of Nicolas Cage in 39 of their lineup graphics over the last year. And they just dropped that on Twitter and they said, hey, have a scavenger hunt and we'll send a letter of recognition to the people who find the most images. I mean, they're just very funny. They're petty when it's appropriate. You know, I love a good petty social media exchange. So if you're not following the tribe on Twitter, you need to do it. The handle is Indians for now. And hopefully, when they do change names, they will keep the same social media management because it's too good. It's a good follow. All right, that is it for 3 Things to Know this week. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. If you are enjoying this podcast, I would love it if you would share it with your friends. Also, leave a rating and a review. That way we can connect with more people here in Northeast Ohio. And also, send me a message if you leave a review and let me know. You can hit me up at _Stephanie Haney on Twitter and Instagram. You can also shoot me an email if you would prefer. That's at shaney@wkyc.com. And if we get a couple reviews in, then I will read them here and we can share them on the podcast. And that would be what I think is a lot of fun. All right, I'll see you back here next week. Between now and then, everyone stay safe, be well, and go Tribe.
Thanks for listening to 3 Things to Know with Stephanie Haney from WKYC Studios. Subscribe now to stay in the know.